What was the first Red Scare in the U.S. Part 2? Number 4. The impact of the Red Scare on civil liberties. In the midst of widespread fear and paranoia, the government took drastic measures to suppress perceived threats to national security, often at the expense of individual rights and freedoms. One of the most egregious examples of this erosion of civil liberties was the passage of the Espionage Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act of 1918. These laws granted the government broad powers to prosecute individuals for expressing dissenting views or criticizing the government during wartime. Under these acts, thousands of people were arrested and imprisoned for their political beliefs, with little to no evidence of actual criminal activity. Additionally, immigrants and political radicals faced heightened scrutiny and discrimination during this time. The government enacted strict immigration policies aimed at limiting the influx of perceived radicals, leading to widespread deportations and deportations of individuals based on their political beliefs or associations. The suppression of civil liberties during the first Red Scare set a dangerous precedent that would be repeated during later periods of political. Number 3. The resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. Originally formed in the aftermath of the Civil War, the KKK experienced a revival in the early 20th century, fueled by fears of immigration, racial integration, and the spread of communism. During the 1920s, the Klan grew in both size and influence, with membership reaching into the millions. The organization targeted not only African Americans but also immigrants, Catholics, Jews, and anyone else perceived as a threat to the white Protestant American way of life. The Klan's ideology of white supremacy and nativism aligned closely with the anti-communist sentiments of the first Red Scare, leading to a symbiotic relationship between the two movements. Both sought to preserve what they saw as traditional American values by suppressing dissent and promoting a narrow definition of patriotism. The resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan during the first Red Scare served as a stark reminder of the deep-seated racism and intolerance present in American society. It highlighted the interconnectedness of various forms of oppression and the ways in which they can reinforce and perpetuate one another. Number 2. The end of the first Red Scare. The first Red Scare began to lose momentum by the mid-1920s, as the initial wave of fear and hysteria began to wane. Several factors contributed to its decline, including the failure of communist revolutions to materialize outside of Russia, the backlash against the excesses of the Palmer raids, and the growing disillusionment with the tactics of anti-communist organizations. Additionally, the economic prosperity of the 1920s helped to alleviate some of the social tensions that had fueled the Red Scare. With the end of World War I and the beginning of a period of economic growth and cultural change known as the Roaring Twenties, many Americans turned their attention away from political radicalism and towards more immediate concerns. By the end of the 1920s, the first Red Scare had largely subsided, although its legacy would continue to shape American politics and society for decades to come. While the fear of communism would resurface periodically throughout the 20th century, the intensity and fervor of the first Red Scare would not be matched until the onset of the Cold War. Number 1. The legacy of the first Red Scare. The legacy of the first Red Scare is deeply ingrained in the fabric of American history, leaving a lasting impact on politics, society, and civil liberties. The intense anti-communist sentiment and hysteria that swept the nation during this time laid the groundwork for future periods of political paranoia and repression. One of the most significant legacies of the first Red Scare is its impact on civil liberties. The government's response to perceived threats of communism led to the erosion of individual rights and freedoms, as seen in the passage of restrictive laws like the Espionage Act and the Sedition Act. These measures set a dangerous precedent for government overreach and suppression of dissent, which would be repeated in later years during periods of political unrest. The first Red Scare also left a lasting mark on American politics, shaping the trajectory of the country's foreign and domestic policies for decades to come. The fear of communism fueled the growth of anti-communist organizations and movements, laying the groundwork for the emergence of McCarthyism and the Red Scare of the 1950s. It also influenced U.S. foreign policy, leading to interventions in other countries aimed at combating the spread of communism and protecting American interests abroad. Furthermore, the first Red Scare exposed the deep-seated racism and xenophobia present in American society. Immigrants and minority groups were unfairly targeted and persecuted under the guise of anti-communism, leading to widespread discrimination and violence. The resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan during this time served as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of various forms of oppression and the ways in which they can reinforce one. See you on the next video.